Everyone knows the word karma. Almost no one knows what it means. The popular understanding, do good things, and good things happen to you. Do bad things, and bad things happen to you, reduces one of the most sophisticated concepts in the history of human thought to a cosmic vending machine. Insert virtue, receive reward. Insert vice, receive punishment. The universe keeps a ledger. The ledger balances. Justice is automatic. This is not karma. This is a children's story about karma, a simplification so extreme that it distorts the original concept beyond recognition. It is as far from the actual meaning of karma as a cartoon atom. The little solar system with electrons orbiting a nucleus is from the actual quantum mechanical description of atomic structure. The image is familiar, the image is wrong, and the image prevents you from understanding the reality. The word karma comes from the Sanskrit root kar, to do, to make, to act. Karma literally means action, not reward, not punishment, not fate, action. The concept, at its core, is staggeringly simple. Actions have consequences. Not because a cosmic judge is watching and dispensing justice, because the action itself, the physical, neural, biological, relational event of performing an intentional act, changes reality. It changes the actor. It changes the recipient. It changes the web of relationships in which the action occurs. And these changes persist. They accumulate. They compound. And they shape the trajectory of all subsequent experience, not as punishment or reward, but as the natural, lawful, inevitable consequence of the change that the action produced. The actual concept developed over 3,000 years by some of the most rigorous philosophical minds in human history, refined through millennia of contemplative investigation, debated across dozens of philosophical schools in Hinduism, Buddhism, and Jainism, is something far more subtle, far more demanding, and far more terrifying than the cosmic vending machine. Karma is not a system of cosmic reward and punishment. It is a description of how reality works. It is the claim that every intentional action, every choice, every thought, every word leaves a trace, not a metaphorical trace. A real trace in the brain, in the body, in the epigenome, in the web of relationships that connects you to other beings, and possibly in the quantum fabric of reality itself. The trace does not disappear. It accumulates. It shapes the trajectory of future experience. And it does this not through divine judgment, not through supernatural intervention, but through a mechanism that the traditions describe with remarkable precision, and that modern science is beginning to document. The mechanism begins in the brain. Every action you perform, every movement, every decision, every habitual response strengthens the neural pathway that produced it. This is Hebb's rule, formulated by Donald Hebb in 1949. Neurons that fire together, wire together. When you perform an action, the neurons involved in producing that action form stronger connections with each other. The synapses become more efficient. The signal travels faster. The pathway becomes easier to activate. And the easier the pathway is to activate, the more likely you are to activate it again. The process is measurable at every scale. At the synaptic level, repeated activation produces long-term potentiation, a strengthening of synaptic connections that can last for hours, days, or permanently. At the cellular level, repeated use causes neurons to grow new dendritic branches, the physical extensions that connect one neuron to another, increasing the number of connections and the speed of transmission. At the structural level, repeated use increases myelination, the fatty sheath that insulates neural pathways, speeding signal transmission by up to 100 times. London taxi drivers who spend years memorizing the city's 25,000 streets have measurably larger hippocampi than the general population. Concert pianists have measurably thicker motor cortices. Bilingual speakers have measurably denser grey matter in the areas associated with language. The brain physically grows in the directions you use it. The pathways you activate become the pathways you have, and the pathways you have become the actions you perform automatically, efficiently, without conscious effort. The action becomes a habit. The habit becomes a character trait. The character trait becomes a destiny. This is not poetry. This is neuroscience. It is the basic mechanism of neural plasticity, documented in thousands of studies, visible on brain scans, measurable at the level of individual synapses. And it is, in its essential structure, exactly what the karma concept describes. Every action leaves a trace. The trace shapes future action, and the accumulated traces define the trajectory of a life. The pianist's 10,000 hours of practice are 10,000 hours of karma accumulation each hour, deepening the neural ruts that make the next hour easier, more automatic, and more expressive. The addict's 10,000 doses are 10,000 hours of karma accumulation in the opposite direction. Each dose deepening the ruts that make the next dose more compulsive, more automatic, and more destructive. The mechanism is identical, the direction is different, and the direction is determined by the intention, by the quality of attention that accompanies the action. Graybiel, a neuroscientist at MIT, who has spent decades studying the neural basis of habits, has mapped this process with extraordinary precision. Graybiel demonstrated that habits are encoded in the basal ganglia, a cluster of structures deep in the brain that operate largely below the threshold of conscious awareness. When a behavior is first learned, it is produced by the prefrontal cortex, the conscious, deliberate, effortful part of the brain. The person thinks about each step. The attention is focused. The effort is felt. But as the behavior is repeated day after day, week after week, control transfers from the prefrontal cortex to the basal ganglia. The behavior becomes automatic. It no longer requires conscious attention or conscious effort. It runs on its own, triggered by environmental cues, executed without awareness, producing outcomes that the conscious mind does not monitor and cannot easily override. Graybiel identified the specific neural signature of this transfer. When a rat learns to navigate a maze for a reward, the rat's brain activity changes in a characteristic pattern. At first, the entire navigation, every turn, every decision point, every step shows high neural activity throughout the prefrontal cortex and the basal ganglia. The rat is thinking about every move. But after weeks of practice, the brain activity compresses. The beginning of the maze triggers a burst of basal ganglia activity, and then the middle of the maze shows almost no neural activity at all. The behavior has been chunked, packaged into a single automated routine that the basal ganglia executes as a unit, without conscious monitoring, without conscious effort, without conscious awareness. The rat is no longer navigating the maze. The rat's basal ganglia are executing a stored program. The rat's consciousness is free to attend to other things or to nothing at all. This is karma forming in real time. Each repetition deepens the chunk. Each deepening makes the behavior more automatic. Each increase in automaticity makes the behavior harder to change, because changing an automatic behavior requires re-engaging the prefrontal cortex, overriding the basal ganglia's stored program, and sustaining the effortful attention long enough to encode a new program. This is why changing habits is hard, not because you lack willpower, because your basal ganglia have a stored program that has been reinforced by hundreds or thousands of repetitions, and the stored program, once activated by its environmental cue, executes with a speed and a reliability that conscious override cannot match. This transfer from conscious control to unconscious automation is the neural equivalent of what the Buddhist tradition calls sankhara, formation. Sankharas are mental formations, habitual patterns of thought, emotion, and behavior that are produced by repeated action and that operate automatically below the threshold of awareness, driving behavior without conscious consent. Every time you react with anger, you strengthen the anger sankhara. Every time you react with patience, you strengthen the patience sankhara. Every time you react with fear, you strengthen the fear sankhara. The sankharas are the neural ruts, the well-worn pathways that the brain defaults to when the conscious mind is not paying attention. And the conscious mind, as Zaltman demonstrated, is not paying attention 95% of the time. 95% of the time, the sankharas are running the show. The habits are in charge. The karma is executing. The depth of the rut matters. A behavior performed once leaves a faint trace, a slight strengthening of synaptic connections that fades within hours if the behavior is not repeated. A behavior performed daily for a month leaves a deeper trace, a measurable change in synaptic strength, in dendritic branching, in the thickness of the myelin sheath that insulates the neural pathway and speeds signal transmission. A behavior performed daily for years leaves a structural trace, a permanent alteration of brain architecture that can be seen on MRI scans, that changes the physical shape of the brain, and that resists modification even when the person desperately wants to change. This is why addiction is so difficult to overcome. This is why trauma responses persist decades after the trauma. This is why personality, the characteristic pattern of thought, emotion, and behavior that defines an individual, is so stable. The ruts are deep. The neural pathways are entrenched. The karma is encoded in the physical structure of the brain. But the brain is not the only substrate that records the traces of action. The body records them too. The field of psychoneuroimmunology, pioneered by Robert Ada and Nicholas Cohen at the University of Rochester in the 1970s, demonstrated that the immune system, the nervous system, and the endocrine system are not separate systems. They are a single integrated network communicating through shared molecules called neuropeptides, responding to the same signals and recording the same experiences. Candace Pert, whose work on neuropeptide receptors we explored in the placebo investigation, showed that every cell in the body has receptors for the molecules of emotion. Every cell listens. Every cell records. Every cell is changed by the emotional quality of your experience. When you experience chronic stress, the record is written not only in the brain's neural pathways, but in the immune system's cellular memory, in the endocrine system's hormonal set points, and in the body's inflammatory baseline. When you experience chronic anger, the record is written in elevated blood pressure, increased inflammatory cytokines, and accelerated atherosclerosis. The body keeps score, as Bessel van der Kolk titled his landmark book on trauma. Every emotion, every intention, every habitual reaction is recorded in the body's tissues, in the body's chemistry, in the body's posture and tension patterns and disease vulnerabilities. When you experience chronic compassion, when you practice loving-kindness meditation, for example, the record is written differently. Richard Davidson at the University of Wisconsin demonstrated that experienced compassion meditators show measurably different immune responses, higher antibody production after influenza vaccination, reduced inflammatory markers, enhanced natural killer cell activity compared to non-meditators. Dean Ornish at the Preventive Medicine Research Institute showed that lifestyle changes, including meditation and compassion practice, altered the expression of over 500 genes, upregulating genes associated with disease, prevention, and downregulating genes associated with cancer, heart disease, and inflammation. Herbert Benson at Harvard demonstrated that the relaxation response, a meditative state characterized by reduced metabolic rate, decreased heart rate, and lowered blood pressure produces changes in gene expression within minutes of practice. The compassion is recorded in the body. The trace is biological. The karma is written in cells, and the writing can be read with gene expression arrays, with immune function assays, with inflammatory biomarkers by any laboratory equipped to look. And then there is the epigenetic dimension, the dimension that transforms karma from a metaphor into a molecular fact. We explored the epigenetic research of Damasio and Ressler in detail in the fear investigation, and the findings bear repeating in this context, because they are the most direct scientific evidence for the intergenerational transmission of experiential traces that any laboratory has produced. Damasio and Ressler demonstrated that fear-conditioned mice pass their fear to their children and grandchildren through epigenetic changes in their sperm modifications of the alpha 151 gene's methylation pattern that altered the offspring's olfactory neurons, making them larger, more numerous, and more sensitive to the feared odor. The offspring had never experienced the fear. They had never encountered the odor. They were raised by foster mothers who had no connection to the original experiment, and yet they carried the trace of their father's experience in their DNA, not in the genetic sequence, which was unchanged, but in the epigenetic modifications that control which genes are expressed and how strongly. Rachel Yehuda extended this to humans, documenting that Holocaust survivors' children showed altered FKBP5 gene methylation and modified cortisol profiles that correlated with the severity of their parents' trauma. The parents' experience was written into the children's stress biology. The trace traveled across generations, through the germline, through the molecular machinery of inheritance. But epigenetic inheritance is not limited to trauma. It also records positive experience. Michael Meany at McGill University demonstrated that rats raised by attentive, nurturing mothers showed different epigenetic profiles than rats raised by neglectful mothers, and that the epigenetic differences affected the offspring's stress, reactivity, exploratory behavior, and parenting style across multiple generations. The nurturing was inherited, the care was transmitted, the positive karma was encoded in the epigenome and passed to the next generation, just as the negative karma of fear and trauma was. Dean Ornish's research showed that lifestyle changes, including meditation, exercise, social support, and a plant-based diet, reversed epigenetic aging markers and altered the expression of over 500 genes within 3 months. The epigenome is not fixed, it is responsive, it records experience, and it can be changed by changing the experiences that are being recorded. This is the molecular basis of the tradition's insistence that karma can be transformed. The ruts are deep, but they are not permanent. New actions deposit new epigenetic marks. New intentions generate new gene expression profiles. New karma overwrites old karma, not instantly, not easily, but genuinely. The epigenome is a palimpsest, a manuscript that has been written on, erased, and written on again. Your ancestors' karma is written there. Your parents' karma is written there. Your own karma is written there. And what you do next, what you intend, what you practice, what you cultivate will be written there too. This is intergenerational karma described by the traditions for millennia and confirmed by the laboratory in the 21st century. The actions of the parent shape the biology of the child, not through parenting, not through cultural transmission, through the molecular machinery of the epigenome. The father's fear becomes the son's fear. The grandmother's trauma becomes the granddaughter's cortisol profile. The ancestor's experience becomes the descendant's predisposition. The karma is inherited, biologically, molecularly, across generations. But the most precise scientific analog to the karma concept is not neural plasticity, not psychoneuroimmunology, and not epigenetics, though all three are relevant. It is Antonio Damasio's somatic marker hypothesis, which we explored in the subconscious investigation. Damasio demonstrated that every significant decision you make leaves a bodily trace, a somatic marker that biases future decisions in the same direction. The body records the outcome of the decision. If the outcome was positive, the somatic marker is a subtle positive feeling, a slight relaxation, a faint warmth, a barely perceptible sense of rightness that biases you towards similar decisions in the future. If the outcome was negative, the somatic marker is a subtle negative feeling, a slight tension, a faint unease, a barely perceptible sense of wrongness that biases you away from similar decisions. The markers operate below the threshold of conscious awareness. You do not know they are there, but they are guiding your behavior, tilting you towards some choices and away from others, based on the accumulated record of your past actions and their consequences. Damasio demonstrated this with the Iowa gambling task, a card game designed to measure unconscious decision-making. Participants draw from 4 decks of cards. 2 decks are good. They produce modest wins and small losses, yielding a net gain over time. 2 decks are bad. They produce large wins but larger losses, yielding a net loss over time. Healthy participants begin avoiding the bad decks and favoring the good decks long before they can consciously explain which decks are which. Their skin conductance, a measure of unconscious emotional arousal, shows anticipatory stress responses when their hand moves toward a bad deck, approximately 40 trials before conscious understanding arrives. The body knows. The somatic markers know. The karma of past draws the accumulated record of which choices produced, which outcomes is guiding behavior through channels that consciousness cannot access. Patients with damage to the ventromedial prefrontal cortex, the brain region that connects emotional processing to decision-making, lack this guidance. They can analyze the odds intellectually. They can explain which decks are better, but they cannot feel the somatic markers. And without the markers, without the body's karmic record, they make catastrophically bad decisions. They choose the bad decks repeatedly. They lose everything. Their intelligence is intact. Their karma is erased. And without karma, without the accumulated bodily wisdom of past experience, intelligence alone is not enough to navigate life. This is karma, operating at the level of the body. Every action deposits a somatic marker. Every marker biases future action. The accumulated markers, the total record of all your significant decisions and their outcomes, constitute your karmic inheritance at the bodily level. They are why certain situations make you uneasy for reasons you cannot articulate, why certain people make you uncomfortable without any obvious cause, why certain decisions feel right and others feel wrong before you have time to think about them. The somatic markers are the body's karmic record. They are the biological substrate of what the traditions call vasana, the deep dispositional tendencies that shape experience from below the surface of awareness. But the karma concept extends beyond what conventional neuroscience and biology can explain, because the traditions do not claim merely that actions leave traces in the brain and body. They claim that actions leave traces in reality itself, in the fabric of the cosmos, in the structure of existence, in the web of relationships that connects all beings to each other and to the ground of being. An action is not merely a neural event, it is a cosmic event. It ripples outward, affecting not only the actor but the recipient, not only the present but the future, not only the individual but the community, not only the physical but the subtle dimensions of reality that the traditions map and that the quantum framework may illuminate. The intention behind the action is what the traditions identify as the critical variable. The Buddha said explicitly, "It is intention that I call karma. Having formed an intention, one acts through body, speech and mind, not the action alone." the intention. Two people perform the same physical action, a surgeon cutting tissue and an attacker cutting tissue. The physical action is identical, the intention is opposite, and the karmic consequence, the traditions insist, is entirely different. The surgeon's cut heals, the attacker's cut harms. The trace left in the fabric of reality in the surgeon's neural pathways, in the surgeon's somatic markers, in the surgeon's epigenetic profile, in the relationship between the surgeon and the patient, is opposite to the trace left by the attacker. The intention determines the karmic weight, not the physical action. Modern neuroscience supports this distinction with remarkable specificity. Tanya Singer at the Max Planck Institute has shown that observing someone in pain activates different neural circuits depending on the observer's relationship to the person and the observer's intent. Empathic concern, the intention to help, activates the medial prefrontal cortex and the ventral striatum, producing a warm, approach-oriented physiological state. Empathic distress, the overwhelmed, self-focused response to another's pain, activates the anterior insular and the anterior cingulate cortex, producing an aversive, withdrawal-oriented physiological state. The external stimulus is identical, another person in pain. The internal response is opposite depending on the intention, the disposition, the habitual pattern of the observer. The intention shapes the neural response. The intention determines which pathways are activated, which hormones are released, which somatic markers are formed, and there is an interpersonal dimension that extends karma beyond the individual brain. Giacomo Rizzolatti's discovery of mirror neurons at the University of Parma in the 1990s revealed that performing an action and observing someone else performing the same action activate the same neural circuits. When you watch someone reach for a glass, the motor neurons in your brain that would produce the reaching movement fire, even though you are sitting still. When you watch someone in pain, the pain circuits in your brain activate, even though you are not injured. The mirror neuron system creates a neural bridge between self and other, a bridge through which actions, intentions, and emotional states flow from one brain to another. This has a karmic implication. Your actions do not merely leave traces in your own brain. Through the mirror neuron system, your actions leave traces in the brains of everyone who observes them. Your anger activates anger circuits in the people around you. Your compassion activates compassion circuits. Your fear activates fear circuits. The karma of your action is not confined to your nervous system. It ripples outward through the mirror neuron bridges that connect your brain to every brain that perceives you. You are not creating karma only for yourself. You are creating karma for everyone who witnesses your actions, who receives your words, who is touched by the electromagnetic field of your heart. The interconnected nature of karma, the traditional insistence that your actions affect all beings, not just yourself, has a neural basis in the mirror neuron system that Rizzolatti mapped. The Buddhist concept of dependent origination, pratitya samutpada, captures this interconnection. Nothing exists independently. Every event arises in dependence upon conditions, and every event, in turn, becomes a condition for the arising of future events. Your action is conditioned by your past karma, by the neural pathways, the somatic markers, the epigenetic modifications that your previous actions deposited. And your action, in turn, conditions the future, not only your future, but the future of everyone your action touches. The web of karma is not a personal ledger. It is a collective network, a web of cause and condition that connects every being to every other being through the traces that actions leave in the shared fabric of neural, social, and possibly quantum reality. The Buddhist insistence that cetana intention is karma is not a moral platitude. It is a neurological fact. And here is where the investigation reaches the boundary of established science and enters the territory that only the quantum framework and the traditions can navigate. Because the intention does not merely shape the actor's neural pathways, it may shape the field of quantum possibility from which future events emerge. If the quantum Zeno effect is real, if repeated attention to a specific mental state stabilizes that state, then the repeated intention behind habitual actions may be stabilizing specific quantum patterns in the brain and in the body, and possibly in the non-local connections that link the individual to the implicate order. The compassionate person's repeated compassionate intentions may be stabilizing patterns of quantum coherence, coherent neural states, coherent cardiac rhythms, coherent electromagnetic fields that couple with the quantum vacuum in ways that attract coherent experiences. The hostile person's repeated hostile intentions may be stabilizing patterns of quantum incoherence, disordered neural states, disordered cardiac rhythms, disordered electromagnetic fields that couple with the quantum vacuum in ways that attract disordered experiences. This is speculative. It must be stated clearly. The quantum Zeno mechanism of karma has not been experimentally tested. The connection between intention, quantum coherence, and the quality of subsequent experience is hypothetical. But the speculation is grounded in established principles. The Zeno effect is real, neural plasticity is real, cardiac coherence is real, and the traditions independently, across every continent and every century, describe exactly this mechanism. Intention shapes action. Action leaves a trace. The trace shapes future experience, and the accumulated traces define the trajectory of a life. The next part of this investigation will examine the quantum dimensions of karma in detail and the tradition's maps of how karma operates across time, across lives, and across the boundaries of the individual self. Because the deepest claim of the karma concept is not that your actions have consequences, everyone knows that. The deepest claim is that your intentions are literally shaping the fabric of reality, and the quantum physics of the observer effect, the Zeno effect, and the implicate order may explain how karma, as the traditions describe it, is not merely a biological process. The neural pathways, the somatic markers, the epigenetic modifications, these are real, these are measurable, and these are part of the picture. But they are not the whole picture. The traditions claim something more. That intentional action leaves a trace not only in the brain and the body, but in reality itself, in the fabric of the cosmos, in the structure of existence, in the web of connection that binds all events to all other events. The neuroscience explains how karma operates within the individual nervous system. The quantum physics may explain how karma operates beyond it, how every action ripples outward into the non-local, entangled, interconnected quantum field from which all experience arises. The observer effect, the foundational discovery of quantum mechanics, is the starting point. We have encountered the observer effect in every investigation we have conducted. In the double-slit experiment, the act of observation changes the behavior of the particle, collapsing the wave function from a superposition of possibilities into a definite outcome. In Bell's theorem experiments, the choice of measurement at one location instantaneously correlates with the outcome at a distant location, demonstrating that quantum reality is non-local, that the boundaries between here and there are not as solid as classical physics assumed. In Wheeler's delayed choice experiment, the observation made now determines the behavior of the particle in the past, demonstrating that the boundaries between now and then are not as solid as classical physics assumed. The observer effect has a karmic structure. Every observation changes reality. Every measurement collapses a possibility into an actuality. And the collapsed actuality persists. It becomes part of the history of the universe, part of the record that shapes all subsequent events. The observation is not neutral. It is not passive. It is an act that selects one reality from many possibilities and makes that reality definite. And once the reality is made definite, it cannot be unmade. The collapse is irreversible. The observation is permanent. The trace is real. This is the quantum version of the karmic principle. No action disappears. In classical physics, information can be destroyed. A book can be burned. A signal can be lost. A record can be erased. But in quantum mechanics, information is conserved. The unitarity of quantum evolution, a mathematical property of the Schrödinger equation, guarantees that the total information content of the universe is preserved. No information is ever truly lost. Every observation, every collapse, every action is permanently recorded in the quantum state of the universe. This is not a metaphor for karma. This is the physics that makes karma physically possible. If consciousness operates through the observer effect, as Stapp, von Neumann, and Wheeler argue, then every conscious act is an observation. Every intentional action is a quantum measurement. Every choice collapses a superposition. And every collapse leaves a trace not just in the brain's neural pathways, but in the quantum field from which the brain's states emerge. The karmic trace is not merely neurological, it is quantum mechanical. It is a permanent change in the history of the universe, a definite outcome that replaces an indefinite possibility, a collapsed state that shapes the field of future possibilities. Every action you perform narrows the field of what comes next, not by eliminating future possibilities entirely, but by biasing the probabilities, by shaping the landscape of possibility from which future events will emerge. The action creates a groove in the quantum landscape. The groove makes certain future events more probable and others less probable. And the groove persists because collapsed quantum states do not uncollapse. The quantum Zeno effect deepens the analogy and transforms it from an analogy into a potential mechanism. We explored the Zeno effect extensively in our investigations of placebo, free will, and fear. The Zeno effect is the quantum principle that repeated observation of a quantum state prevents that state from evolving. It freezes the state in place, holding it against the natural tendency to decohere into other states. Fear, we argued, exploits the Zeno effect negatively. Fearful attention stabilizes the feared outcome. Love exploits it positively. Loving attention stabilizes the desired outcome. Karma may be the Zeno effect operating across a lifetime. Consider the mechanism in detail. A person who practices compassion daily, who generates compassionate intentions, performs compassionate actions, and cultivates compassionate awareness as a sustained habit, is performing thousands of quantum measurements biased toward compassion. Each compassionate act is a process, one event, a conscious selection of a compassionate neural template from the superposition of templates that the brain generates. Each selection stabilizes the compassionate template through the Zeno effect, and the stabilized template becomes the default, the pattern that the brain returns to automatically, without conscious effort, because it has been reinforced by thousands of observations. The neuroscience confirms the accumulation. Davidson and Lutz demonstrated that long-term Buddhist meditators, practitioners with 10,000 or more hours of compassion meditation, show permanently altered brain activity compared to novice meditators. The alteration is not a temporary state that appears during meditation and disappears afterward. It is a trait, a permanent change in baseline brain function that persists whether the meditator is meditating or not. The experienced meditators show sustained gamma wave activity in the prefrontal cortex, the neural signature of focused, integrative, compassionate awareness at levels that are 3 to 4 standard deviations above the norm. Their brains have been permanently reshaped by their practice. Their karma, their accumulated compassionate observations, has literally restructured the physical organ through which they experience reality. And the restructuring is specific. Different types of meditation produce different types of restructuring. Attention meditation thickens the prefrontal cortex. Compassion meditation enlarges the insula, the brain region, associated with empathic accuracy and interoceptive awareness. Visualization meditation enhances the connectivity between the visual cortex and the prefrontal cortex. The karma is specific to the practice. The trace corresponds to the intention, and the accumulated traces, the total record of all meditative observations, constitute a comprehensive restructuring of the brain that changes not only what the meditator thinks, but how the meditator perceives, how the meditator feels, and how the meditator engages with reality. But the Zeno effect does not merely stabilize the neural template. If the brain is a quantum system, as Penrose, Hameroff, and Stapp argue, then the stabilization occurs at the quantum level. The quantum states of the microtubules, the ion channels, and the synaptic vesicles are biased toward the patterns associated with compassion. The quantum field of the brain is shaped by the repeated compassionate observations, and if the brain's quantum field is connected to the quantum vacuum, to the implicate order, to the non-local web of quantum correlations, then the shaping of the brain's quantum field may influence the broader quantum field in which the brain is embedded. This is the quantum mechanism of karma's cosmic dimension. The compassionate person does not merely change their own brain, they change their relationship to the quantum field. They bias the field subtly, incrementally, over thousands of observations towards states that are coherent with compassion. And the biased field shapes the probability distribution of future events, making compassion coherent experiences slightly more probable and compassion incoherent experiences slightly less probable. The cosmic dimension of karma is not that the universe rewards compassion through some external mechanism. It is that compassion shapes the quantum field from which the universe unfolds, and the shaped field produces experiences that are coherent with the shaping. The hostile person experiences the same mechanism in the opposite direction. Thousands of hostile observations stabilize hostile neural templates. The hostile templates shape the brain's quantum field towards states associated with conflict, threat, and disorder. The disordered field biases the probability distribution of future events toward disorder, and the person experiences what the traditions call bad karma, not because the universe is punishing them, but because their repeated hostile observations have shaped the quantum field from which their experience emerges. David Bohm's implicate order provides the framework for understanding how karma's traces are preserved. In the implicate order, nothing is lost. Every event, every observation, every action, every intention is enfolded into the deeper structure of reality. The event may disappear from the explicate order, the surface reality of observable phenomena, but it persists in the implicate order, where it continues to influence the unfolding of subsequent events. The implicate order is the universe's memory, and karma, in this framework, is the content of that memory, the accumulated record of all intentional actions enfolded into the deep structure of reality, shaping the unfolding of experience in ways that the surface mind cannot perceive, but that the traditions have described with remarkable precision. Bohm used the analogy of the hologram to explain how the implicate order preserves information. In a hologram, every part contains information about the whole. If you break a holographic plate in half, each half still contains the entire image at lower resolution, but complete. Similarly, in the implicate order, every region of space-time contains information about every other region. Every event is enfolded everywhere, and the unfolding of any particular event is influenced by the entire enfolded content, by the total record of all events that have been enfolded into the implicate order. Karma, in this framework, is not a personal ledger. It is a feature of the holographic structure of reality. Your actions are enfolded into the implicate order. They become part of the total information content of the universe, and the total information content shapes the unfolding of all subsequent events, including your subsequent events, but not only your subsequent events. The karma of your actions influences not only your future, but the future of everyone whose experience unfolds from the same implicate order. This is why the traditions insist that karma is not merely personal. It is collective, it is cosmic. Every action you perform changes the information content of the universe, subtly, incrementally, but really. And the changed universe produces changed experiences for you and for everyone else. The retrocausal dimension of karma is perhaps the most provocative and the most consistent with the tradition's claims about karmic maturation. The Buddhist tradition describes a phenomenon called vipaka, the ripening of karma. A karmic seed planted by an intentional action does not necessarily produce its result immediately. It may ripen in hours, in days, in years, in lifetimes. The ripening depends on conditions, on the presence of other karmic seeds, on the circumstances of the person's life, on the opportunities for the seed to find expression. A seed of generosity planted today may ripen as an experience of abundance tomorrow, or in 10 years, or in a future lifetime. The timing is unpredictable, but the ripening is inevitable. No karmic seed is ever lost. Every seed eventually finds its moment to sprout. Retrocausality, the evidence that the future can influence the present, provides a quantum mechanism for karmic ripening that the traditions could not have articulated in their own language, but that maps onto their descriptions with striking precision. If retrocausality is real, if quantum correlations extend backward in time, as Wheeler's delayed choice experiment demonstrates, and as Aharonov's two-state vector formalism describes, then the future ripening of a karmic seed may reach backward and influence the present conditions that lead to the ripening. The karmic seed planted today biases the future. The biased future reaches backward and shapes the present, and the shaped present creates the conditions for the seed's ripening. This is not linear causation, cause followed by effect in temporal sequence. This is quantum causation, a loop of mutual influence in which past action and future consequence are entangled across time, each shaping the other, each participating in the other's reality. The Buddhist tradition describes this loop with the concept of dependent origination, pratitya samutpada, which the Buddha called the most profound and most important of all his teachings. Nothing arises independently. Every event depends on conditions, and every event contributes to conditions. The 12 links of dependent origination describe the cycle through which karma perpetuates itself. Ignorance gives rise to formations, the habitual patterns, the sankharas, the karmic dispositions that shape the mind's response to experience. Formations give rise to consciousness, the stream of momentary awareness that arises in dependence upon the karmic formations. Consciousness gives rise to name and form, the psychophysical organism, the embodied mind, the particular configuration of body and mind that karma produces. Name and form gives rise to the 6 sense bases, the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind, through which experience enters awareness. The sense bases give rise to contact, the meeting of sense organ, sense object, and consciousness that constitutes a moment of experience. Contact gives rise to feeling the pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral quality of the experience. Feeling gives rise to craving, the desire for pleasant feeling to continue and unpleasant feeling to cease. Craving gives rise to clinging, the attachment to objects, views, practices, and self-identity that solidifies craving into a stable pattern. Clinging gives rise to becoming the karmic momentum that drives the mind toward future existence. Becoming gives rise to birth. Birth gives rise to aging and death. And aging and death give rise to sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair, which, through ignorance, give rise to new formations, and the cycle begins again. The 12 links are not a linear chain. They are a loop, a self-perpetuating cycle of karmic creation, in which each link depends on the previous link and produces the next. And the loop does not operate only within a single lifetime. It operates across lifetimes, across the temporal span of a karmic stream that the tradition describes as beginningless. The karma you are experiencing now was set in motion by actions in previous existences, actions whose traces have been carried through the alaya vijnana, through the karana sharira, through the epigenetic inheritance of the body into the present moment. And the actions you perform now are setting in motion karma that will ripen in future existences, karma whose traces will be carried forward by the same mechanisms into moments you cannot yet imagine. Quantum entanglement adds an interpersonal dimension to karma that the traditions have always insisted upon, but that physics has only recently been able to describe. Entanglement is the quantum phenomenon in which two particles having interacted remain correlated regardless of the distance between them. Measure one particle and you instantly know something about the other, even if the other is on the other side of the universe. The correlation is not mediated by any signal. It is not transmitted at any speed. It is a feature of the entangled state itself, a non-local connection that persists as long as the entanglement is maintained. If human interactions create quantum entanglement between the interacting brains, and this is speculative, but it is consistent with the non-local correlations that HeartMath has measured between the hearts and brains of people in close proximity, then every human interaction is a karmic event that creates a non-local connection between the participants. The connection does not disappear when the interaction ends. The entanglement persists, and the entangled state means that the future experience of each participant is correlated with the future experience of the other, not because they are in communication, but because they share a quantum state. Consider what this means for the web of human relationships. Every conversation you have ever had, every argument, every act of kindness, every betrayal, every moment of love, each of these interactions may have created an entangled state, a quantum bond between you and the other person that persists long after the interaction has ended. The bond does not require physical proximity. Entanglement is non-local. The correlation holds regardless of distance. The bond does not require temporal continuity. Entanglement persists until it is disrupted by decoherence, and in a biological system with the kind of quantum coherence that Hameroff describes, the bond might persist far longer than classical physics would predict. This is the physics of relational karma. When you harm someone, you create an entangled state between your quantum field and theirs, a state characterized by incoherence, by conflict, by the disordered electromagnetic signatures that HeartMath associates with negative emotions. When you help someone, you create a different entangled state, one characterized by coherence, by harmony, by the ordered electromagnetic signatures associated with love and gratitude. The traditions describe this as the karmic bond, the connection between beings that persists across time and across lives, shaping the probability that they will meet again, interact again, and resolve the unfinished karmic business between them. The concept of karmic bonds explains phenomena that conventional psychology struggles with. The instant recognition you sometimes feel upon meeting a stranger, the sense that you have known this person before, that there is unfinished business between you, that the relationship has a depth that the brief duration of your acquaintance cannot account for. The traditions call these karmic connections bonds formed in previous interactions, preserved in the entangled quantum states of the alaya vijnana, activated when the conditions for their expression arise. The physics of entanglement provides a mechanism, speculative but specific, for how such bonds could persist and how they could influence future experience. The HeartMath research supports this picture at the electromagnetic level. McCraty's team demonstrated that the heart's electromagnetic field, extending several feet from the body, carries information about the person's emotional state, and that this information can be detected in the brain waves of nearby individuals. When two people are in close proximity, their hearts and brains synchronize, their heart rate variability patterns correlate, their brainwave patterns entrain, and the emotional state of one person influences the physiology of the other. This electromagnetic coupling is a measurable, physical mechanism through which one person's karmic state, their emotional quality, their intentional direction, the coherence or incoherence of their heart influences the karmic state of another person. The coupling is not mystical, it is electromagnetic, and it provides a physical basis for the tradition's insistence that your karma affects not only you, but everyone around you. There is one more quantum dimension that connects to karma, and it may be the most important. The quantum vacuum is not empty. As we explored in the subconscious investigation, the vacuum contains zero-point energy, virtual particles, and if the holographic principle is correct, the complete information content of the universe, encoded on the boundary of space-time. The vacuum is not the absence of things. It is the presence of everything in potential form, enfolded, waiting to unfold. If every intentional action modifies the quantum vacuum, if every observation collapses a possibility and thereby changes the information content of the vacuum, then karma is literally written into the quantum vacuum, fabric of space-time, not metaphorically, literally. Every compassionate intention changes the vacuum state, subtly, infinitesimally, but really, every hostile intention changes it in the opposite direction. And the accumulated changes, the total karmic record of all intentional actions by all sentient beings, constitute the current state of the quantum vacuum, which in turn constitutes the field of possibilities from which all future experience emerges. This is the cosmic dimension of karma, that the traditions describe the dimension in which every action matters, every intention counts, every thought leaves a trace in the fabric of reality. The traditions did not have the language of quantum mechanics. They did not speak of vacuum states, entanglement, or the holographic principle, but they described, with extraordinary consistency across cultures and centuries, a reality in which no action is lost, in which every intention shapes the future, in which the quality of your awareness determines the quality of your experience, and in which the accumulated traces of all beings' actions constitute the karmic structure of the cosmos. The Hindu tradition captures this with the concept of Rita, the cosmic order, the universal law that governs the relationship between action and consequence. Rita is not imposed by a lawgiver. It is the nature of reality itself, as fundamental as gravity, as inescapable as entropy, as impersonal as the speed of light. You do not violate Rita by performing harmful actions any more than you violate gravity by stepping off a cliff. You simply experience the natural consequence of the action, the natural unfolding of the karmic trace that the action deposited in the fabric of reality. The cliff does not punish you for stepping off it. Gravity does not judge you for falling. The ground does not resent you for hitting it. The consequence is the natural result of the action, lawful, predictable, and impersonal. This is karma, as the traditions actually describe it, not cosmic justice but cosmic law, not divine punishment but natural consequence, not a judge but a mechanism. The Buddhist tradition makes the same point with the concept of dharma niyama, the natural law of phenomena. Karma is one of 5 niyama natural orders that govern the universe. The others are utu niyama, physical laws, bija niyama, biological laws, chitta niyama, psychological laws, and dharma niyama, spiritual laws. Karma is not supernatural. It is natural as the law that seeds produce plants of the same species, as natural as the law that heat causes expansion, as natural as the law that mental states produce corresponding bodily states. The karmic law operates alongside the physical, biological, and psychological laws, interacting with them, modified by them, but not reducible to them. It is its own domain of natural law. And the quantum framework, which already describes a domain of natural law that is irreducible to classical physics, may be the scientific language in which this additional domain can be expressed. It is essential to state clearly what is established and what is speculative in this picture. The neuroscience of habit formation is established. The epigenetic transmission of experiential traces is established. The somatic marker system is established. These mechanisms document, at the biological level, the core karmic principle. Actions leave traces, and traces shape future experience. The quantum dimensions, the Zeno stabilization of karmic patterns, the implicate order's preservation of karmic traces, the retrocausal mechanism of karmic ripening, the entanglement-based mechanism of relational karma, the vacuum state encoding of cosmic karma are speculative. They are consistent with established physics. They are supported by the convergence between quantum theory and traditional descriptions, but they are not experimentally confirmed. The honest position is this: karma, at the biological level, is real. The brain records every action. The body records every intention. The epigenome records every experience and transmits it to the next generation. The somatic markers guide future decisions based on the accumulated record of past decisions. This much is science. The quantum extension, the claim that karma operates beyond the individual nervous system, through the quantum field, across the implicate order, backward through time, is hypothesis. Well-formed hypothesis. Physically consistent hypothesis, but hypothesis nonetheless. And yet, the traditions do not merely describe biological karma, they describe cosmic karma. They describe a universe in which every action matters, in which no intention is lost, in which the accumulated record of all sentient beings' actions shapes the fabric of reality itself. And the quantum framework, the only framework in physics that is consistent with non-locality, with entanglement, with the observer effect, with the implicate order, provides the only scientific language in which such cosmic karma could be described. The traditions may be wrong. The quantum extension may be wrong. But if they are right, if every intentional action really does leave a trace in the quantum fabric of reality, then the moral implications are staggering. And the tradition's prescriptions for cultivating positive karma and dissolving negative karma become not merely ethical advice, but instructions for participating in the creation of reality itself. The next part of this investigation will enter the traditions and hear their descriptions of how karma works across time, across lives, and across the boundary between action and reality. And the descriptions, as we will see, are far more nuanced, far more sophisticated, and far more scientifically resonant than the cosmic vending machine that popular culture has made of them. The traditions did not invent the concept of karma from philosophical speculation. They discovered it through the direct, sustained, disciplined observation of the mind's inner workings, conducted over centuries by contemplatives who devoted their entire lives to the investigation of consciousness. The concept emerged independently in multiple traditions in Hinduism, in Buddhism, in Jainism, and analogues of it appeared, under different names and in different frameworks, in Christianity, Islam, Judaism, and Taoism. The convergence is not a product of cultural borrowing. The traditions that independently arrived at the karma concept had no contact with each other for most of their developmental history. They were observing the same reality, and they described the same mechanism in different vocabularies, with different emphases, through different metaphysical frameworks, but with a structural consistency that is difficult to explain as coincidence. And that becomes increasingly significant in light of the neuroscience and quantum physics we have assembled. Buddhism provides the most precise and the most detailed analysis of karma in any tradition, and the analysis begins with a single word, cetana. It is intention that I call karma, the Buddha said in the Anguttara Nikaya. Having formed an intention, one acts through body, speech, and mind. This statement, one of the most frequently quoted in the entire Buddhist canon, establishes the fundamental principle of Buddhist karma. The moral weight of an action is determined not by its physical form, but by the intention that accompanies it. The same physical action giving food to another person can be wholesome karma if the intention is genuine generosity, unwholesome karma if the intention is to create obligation and manipulate the recipient, or neutral karma if the intention is absent, as in an automatic, unthinking gesture. The food is the same, the physical action is the same. The karmic trace is entirely different because the intention is different. And the intention, not the action, is what the Buddhist tradition calls karma. The Buddhist analysis distinguishes three channels through which karma operates: body kaya karma, speech vasi karma, and mind mano karma. Actions of the body physical deeds produce karmic traces. Actions of speech words, whether spoken, written, or now typed, produce karmic traces. And actions of the mind, thoughts, intentions, attitudes, emotional responses produce karmic traces. The three channels are not equal. Mental karma is the most powerful because the intention precedes and determines the quality of both speech and physical action. A person who harbors hostile intentions but speaks kindly and acts generously is still accumulating hostile karma because the mental intention is hostile regardless of the behavioral output. This is not hypocrisy in the moral sense. It is karma in the mechanical sense. The mind's habitual hostile orientation deepens the hostile neural pathways, deposits hostile somatic markers, and stabilizes hostile quantum templates, regardless of the kindness of the external behavior. The behavior may fool other people. It does not fool the alaya vijnana. The karmic trace is honest. The Buddhist tradition classifies karma as kusala, wholesome, or akusala, unwholesome, and the classification is precise. Wholesome karma arises from three roots: non-greed, generosity, renunciation, non-hatred, loving-kindness, compassion, and non-delusion. Wisdom, insight. Unwholesome karma arises from three roots: greed, craving, attachment, possessiveness, hatred, anger, aversion, ill will, and delusion, ignorance, confusion, misperception. Every intentional action is rooted in one or more of these six qualities, and the quality of the root determines the quality of the fruit, the karmic consequence that will eventually ripen from the seed that the action has planted. The botanical metaphor is central to the Buddhist understanding. Karma is a seed. The seed is planted by an intentional action. The seed is stored in the alaya vijnana, the storehouse consciousness that we explored in the subconscious investigation. The seed requires conditions to ripen: moisture, sunlight, soil, temperature. If the conditions are absent, the seed remains dormant. It does not disappear, it waits. And when the conditions arise, when the circumstances of life produce the environment in which the seed can germinate, the seed sprouts. The karmic consequence manifests. The fruit is experienced. This is why karma is not fate. Fate is fixed. Karma is dynamic. A seed that has been planted can be prevented from ripening by changing the conditions, by planting counter seeds, by removing the moisture and the sunlight that the seed requires. A person who has accumulated a large store of negative karma through years of hostile intentions, harmful actions, and deluded perceptions is not condemned to experience the full consequence of every seed. New karma can be created. Counter seeds, seeds of compassion, generosity, wisdom can be planted. And the counter seeds, if cultivated diligently, can create conditions in which the negative seeds cannot ripen. They do not disappear. The tradition insists that no karmic seed is ever destroyed, but they can be rendered dormant, prevented from finding the conditions for their expression, overwhelmed by the abundance of positive seeds that surround them. This is the Buddhist technology of karma transformation, and it is the most hopeful aspect of the karma concept. You are not imprisoned by your past. You are not condemned by your ancestors' actions. You are not doomed by the accumulated weight of all your previous intentions. You can create new karma. You can plant new seeds. You can cultivate the conditions in which the positive seeds thrive and the negative seeds remain dormant. The Lotus Sutra uses a metaphor that captures this transformative possibility. The rain falls on all plants, equally large trees, small bushes, medicinal herbs, and poisonous weeds. The rain does not discriminate, but the plants absorb the rain according to their nature, each plant taking what it needs, each plant growing according to its own seeds. The rain is the practice, the seeds are the karma, and the growth depends on both on the practice that waters the seeds and on the quality of the seeds that the practice waters. A person with a preponderance of positive seeds, watered by diligent practice, will grow rapidly toward liberation. A person with a heavy burden of negative seeds, watered by the same practice, will grow more slowly, but will still grow. The practice does not fail. The rain does not discriminate. The growth, however slow, is inevitable as long as the practice continues. The Noble Eightfold Path, right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration is the comprehensive technology for this growth. Each element of the path is a specific instruction for creating wholesome karma and preventing unwholesome karma. Right speech plants seeds of truth and kindness, and simultaneously prevents the planting of seeds of deception and cruelty. Right action plants seeds of harmlessness and generosity, and simultaneously prevents the planting of seeds of violence and theft. Right intention plants seeds of renunciation, goodwill, and compassion, and simultaneously uproots the seeds of craving, ill will, and cruelty that are the three unwholesome roots. And right mindfulness sati, the sustained, non-judgmental awareness of present moment experience, is the practice that makes all the others possible. Because without awareness, the intentions that drive actions remain unconscious. And unconscious intentions produce unconscious karma, the deep, automatic, habitual patterns that the person cannot change because the person cannot see. Mindfulness illuminates the unconscious. It brings the sankharas, the habitual formations, the automatic reactions, the conditioned patterns into the light of conscious awareness. And in the light, the patterns can be seen, evaluated, and changed. The person who practices mindfulness does not merely become calmer. They become more karmically agile, more able to see the intentions that drive their actions, more able to choose wholesome intentions over unwholesome ones, more able to plant the seeds they want to plant, rather than the seeds that habit and conditioning plant automatically. The Milindapana, the Questions of King Milinda, a classical Buddhist text recording a dialogue between the Greek king Menander and the monk Nagasena, addresses the question of karmic identity with an analogy that illuminates the quantum framework. The king asks, if there is no permanent self, who experiences the results of karma. If the person who performs the action is not the same person who experiences the consequence, if the self is constantly changing, constantly arising and passing, then karma is unjust. The person who suffers the consequence did not perform the action. Nagasena answers with the analogy of milk and butter. Milk becomes curd, curd becomes butter, butter becomes ghee. Is the ghee the same as the milk? No. Is the ghee different from the milk? No. The ghee arose from the milk through a continuous process of transformation. There is no identity. There is no difference. There is continuity, a continuous flow of transformation in which each state arises from the previous state and gives rise to the next. The person who experiences the karmic consequence is not the same person who performed the action, but they are not a different person either. They are the continuation, the next moment of the karmic stream, shaped by the trace that the previous moment deposited. This is remarkably consistent with the quantum picture. The quantum state at one moment is not identical to the quantum state at the next moment. The wave function evolves, possibilities change, collapses occur. But the quantum state at each moment arises from the quantum state at the previous moment, through a continuous process governed by the Schrödinger equation. There is no identity. There is no discontinuity. There is evolution, the lawful transformation of one quantum state into another. And the karmic traces the collapsed states, the stabilized patterns, the information enfolded into the implicate order, persists through this evolution, shaping each subsequent state without being identical to it. Hinduism maps karma through a framework that is both broader and more cosmological than the Buddhist analysis. The Hindu tradition identifies three types of karma, and the distinction illuminates aspects of the mechanism that the Buddhist analysis leaves implicit. Sanchita karma is the total accumulated karma of all past actions, the complete record of every intention, every deed, every thought across all previous lifetimes. Sanchita karma is stored in the Karana Sharira, the causal body, the deepest layer of the unconscious that we explored in the subconscious investigation. It is vast, containing the karmic record of an individual's entire history, and it is largely inaccessible to conscious awareness. You cannot perceive your Sanchita karma directly, any more than you can perceive the totality of your unconscious memories. But it shapes everything. It determines the broad trajectory of your life, the family you are born into, the body you inhabit, the talents you possess, the challenges you face. It is the deep structure of your karmic situation, the landscape within which your current life unfolds. Prarabdha karma is the portion of Sanchita karma that has been activated for expression in the current lifetime. It is the karma that is bearing fruit now, the portion of the accumulated record that has found conditions suitable for ripening. Prarabdha karma determines the circumstances of your life that you did not choose: your birth, your body, your native intelligence, the historical era and geographical location into which you arrived. These are not random. They are the expression of specific karmic seeds that have ripened, seeds planted in previous existences, stored in the causal body, activated by conditions that you cannot perceive and did not consciously create. The Hindu tradition teaches that prarabdha karma cannot be avoided, it must be experienced. The seeds have already sprouted, the fruit is already forming, the consequence is already unfolding. You can change your relationship to the consequence through acceptance, through wisdom, through the practice of nishkama karma, but you cannot prevent the consequence from manifesting. Kriyamana karma, also called agami karma, is the karma you are creating right now, in this moment, through your current actions and intentions. This is the karma over which you have complete control. You cannot change your Sanchita karma. The past is past. You cannot avoid your prarabdha karma. The activated seeds must bear fruit. But you can choose your kriyamana karma. You can choose what seeds you plant now, what intentions you cultivate now, what actions you perform now. And your Kriyamana karma will become, in future lives, part of your Sanchita karma, shaping the landscape of future experience, determining the broad trajectory of future lives, creating the conditions in which future prarabdha karma will ripen. The Bhagavad Gita, which we explored in the free will investigation, addresses the question of how to act in a world governed by karma without becoming trapped by karma. Krishna's teaching to Arjuna is the most famous prescription for karmic freedom in world literature: nishkama karma, desireless action. You have the right to action alone, never to its fruits. Krishna says, "Let not the fruits of action be your motive, nor let your attachment be to inaction." The instruction is revolutionary and widely misunderstood. It is not an instruction to stop caring about outcomes. It is not an instruction to be passive or indifferent. It is an instruction to act from duty rather than desire to perform the action, because it is right, because it is your dharma, because the situation demands it, and then to release the outcome. To let the universe handle the consequences while you handle the intention. The Gita provides a psychological analysis of why this is so difficult. The three gunas: sattva, clarity; rajas, passion; and tamas, inertia, color, every action and every intention. A sattvic action is performed with clarity, without attachment, without expectation of reward. It is nishkama karma in practice, and it leaves the lightest karmic trace. A rajasic action is performed with passion, with desire for results, with ego involvement. It plants heavy karmic seeds, seeds of craving and attachment that bind the person to the cycle. A tamasic action is performed in ignorance, in delusion. In the darkness of unconscious compulsion, it plants the heaviest seeds of all, seeds of confusion and suffering that ripen as experiences of confusion and suffering in the future. The instruction is not to stop acting. Inaction is itself a form of action and produces its own karma, typically tamasic karma, the karma of avoidance, of cowardice, of the refusal to engage with life's demands. The instruction is to change the quality of the intention that accompanies the action. The shift from rajasic to sattvic intention, from desire-driven to duty-driven, from outcome-attached to outcome-released, is the shift that transforms binding karma into liberating karma. The action may look the same from the outside, but the trace it leaves, the neural pathway it deepens, the somatic marker it deposits, the quantum template it stabilizes, is entirely different, because the intention is different, and the intention is what determines the karmic weight. Nishkama karma is the Hindu technology for breaking the karmic cycle, for continuing to act in the world without accumulating the kind of karma that binds you to the cycle of birth and death. The action is performed, the karmic trace is deposited, but the trace is light because the intention is free from attachment, because the ego is not grasping the outcome, because the action arises from dharma rather than from desire. The light trace does not produce a heavy consequence. It does not bind. It does not deepen the rut. It allows the karmic stream to flow freely, without the obstructions that attachment creates. And eventually, through sustained practice of nishkama karma, through the progressive dissolution of attachment, through the deepening recognition that the true self is not the actor, but the witness, the karmic cycle exhausts itself. The seeds stop being planted, the stream dries up, and what remains is moksha, liberation, release, the freedom from karma that the Hindu tradition identifies as the highest human possibility. Christianity does not use the word karma, but it describes a mechanism that is structurally identical and that adds a dimension that the Eastern traditions do not include. Grace. Paul writes to the Galatians, "Do not be deceived. God cannot be mocked. A man reaps what he sows. Whoever sows to please their flesh, from the flesh will reap destruction. Whoever sows to please the Spirit, from the Spirit will reap eternal life." This is karma expressed in agricultural metaphor, identical in structure to the Buddhist and Hindu descriptions. Sowing is action, reaping is consequence. The quality of the seed determines the quality of the harvest. The mechanism is automatic. God cannot be mocked, meaning the law cannot be circumvented. You reap what you sow, no exceptions, no negotiations, no escape through cleverness or piety or good intentions that are not accompanied by corresponding actions. But Christianity adds something that the Eastern traditions do not: the possibility of breaking the karmic cycle through an intervention that is not earned by the individual's actions. Grace, the unmerited favor of God, is the Christian concept that has no precise parallel in the karma traditions. In the Buddhist framework, karma can be transformed but not erased. The seeds remain in the alaya vijnana, dormant but present, awaiting conditions for their ripening. In the Hindu framework, karma can be exhausted through nishkama, karma and moksha, but the exhaustion is a process, a gradual dissolution, a long journey of practice and surrender. In the Christian framework, grace can intervene instantaneously, completely, unconditionally, and break the chain of karmic consequence. The parable of the prodigal son is the most vivid illustration. The son has squandered his inheritance. He has accumulated enormous karmic debt through greed, through selfishness, through the systematic violation of every duty. In a karmic framework, the son should experience the full consequence of his actions: poverty, shame, alienation, and he does experience them. But when he returns, when he turns around, when he changes the direction of his intention, the father does not wait for the son to work off his debt. The father runs to meet him. The father embraces him. The father cancels the debt. Not because the son has earned the cancellation through virtuous action, not because the son has practiced nishkama karma for 10 lifetimes, because the father's love exceeds the son's karma. Grace is the force that operates outside the karmic system, not violating it but transcending it, not denying the reality of karmic consequence, but offering a pathway through the consequence that the person's own karma could never produce. Jesus himself modeled this transcendence of karmic logic. "You have heard that it was said, 'Eye for eye and tooth for tooth,'" Jesus said. "But I tell you, do not resist an evil person. If anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to them the other cheek also." This is not passive submission. It is the deliberate interruption of the karmic cycle. Eye for eye is karma, the automatic, proportional, mechanical response to harm. Turn the other cheek is grace, the refusal to perpetuate the cycle, the choice to absorb the karmic blow rather than pass it on, the decision to plant a seed of compassion in a field that is saturated with seeds of violence. The person who turns the other cheek does not cancel the slapper's karma. The slapper has planted their seed and will experience its ripening. But the person who turns the other cheek changes their own karma. They break their own cycle, interrupt their own automatic response, plant a different seed in their own alaya vijnana. And the different seed produces a different future, not just for the cheek turner, but for everyone who witnesses the act, for everyone whose mirror neurons fire in response to the unexpected compassion, for everyone whose field of quantum possibility is shifted by the observation of grace in action. This is a radical claim, and it is not merely a theological abstraction. It has a phenomenological dimension, the experience of forgiveness, of being released from the weight of past actions, of starting fresh, of being unburdened. The experience is real. People report it. And the transformation it produces in behavior, in perception, in the quality of subsequent action is measurable. The forgiven person does not merely feel better, they act better. They create different karma. They plant different seeds. The grace does not merely cancel the old debt, it changes the debtor, transforms the quality of intention, the direction of action, the depth of awareness, so that the new karma is qualitatively different from the old. The Islamic tradition addresses karma through the concept of amal deeds and the divine reckoning that follows. The Quran is explicit. Whoever does an atom's weight of good will see it, and whoever does an atom's weight of evil will see it. This verse from Surah Al-Zilzal, 99 to 7 to 8, is one of the most frequently quoted in the Quran, and its message is unmistakably karmic. No action is too small to matter. No intention is too subtle to register. The divine record is comprehensive. Every atom's weight is counted. Every action is preserved. And the reckoning, the moment when the accumulated record is evaluated, is certain. The Islamic concept of niyya, intention, mirrors the Buddhist concept of cetana with striking precision. In Islamic jurisprudence, the moral and legal weight of an action is determined by its intention. The Prophet Muhammad said, "Actions are judged by their intentions, and everyone will be rewarded according to their intention." A prayer performed without sincere intention is not a valid prayer. A charitable gift given for the purpose of social prestige is not genuine charity. A fast observed for the purpose of dieting is not a valid fast. The intention is the determinative factor, the element that transforms a physical action into a moral action, a neutral event into a karmic event. This is cetana in Islamic vocabulary, the principle that the inner quality of the act, not the outer form, determines the karmic trace. But the Islamic tradition, like the Christian tradition, includes a concept that the Eastern traditions do not: tawbah, repentance. Tawbah is not merely feeling sorry. It is a comprehensive process, recognizing the sin, feeling genuine remorse, ceasing the sinful action, resolving never to return to it. And if the sin involved another person, seeking their forgiveness and making restitution. When tawbah is performed sincerely, when the repentance is genuine, the remorse is heartfelt, the change in behavior is real. The Quran promises that Allah not only forgives the sin, but transforms the sin into a good deed. Except for those who repent, believe, and do righteous work. For them, Allah will replace their evil deeds with good deeds. This is karmic transformation, not merely the cancellation of negative karma, but its conversion into positive karma. The trace is not erased, it is transformed. The negative seed is not removed from the alaya vijnana. It is converted through the power of sincere repentance, through the grace of divine mercy, into a positive seed. This parallels the epigenetic evidence. Ornish demonstrated that lifestyle changes, including meditation, community support, and ethical practice, can reverse epigenetic damage within months. The negative epigenetic marks are not merely prevented from deepening, they are replaced by positive marks. The trace is transformed. The karma is rewritten, not through passive waiting. Through active, deliberate, sustained practice, the kind of comprehensive lifestyle change that Tawbah describes. The Islamic concept of karmic transformation through repentance has a molecular mechanism in epigenetic reprogramming, and the mechanism confirms the tradition's claim that negative karma is not permanent, that the traces of past actions can be overwritten, that change is possible. The convergence across traditions is structural. Buddhism says karma is determined by cetana, intention. Hinduism says karma can be transcended through nishkama, karma action, without attachment to results. Christianity says the karmic cycle can be broken by grace, the unmerited intervention of divine love. Islam says negative karma can be transformed by tawbah, sincere repentance, accompanied by genuine change. 4 traditions, 4 vocabularies, 1 mechanism. Intentional action leaves traces. Traces shape future experience, and the quality of the traces can be changed through practice, through awareness, through the cultivation of wholesome intentions and the dissolution of unwholesome ones. And every tradition agrees on the ultimate goal: freedom from the karmic cycle. Buddhism calls it nibbana. Hinduism calls it moksha. Christianity calls it salvation. Islam calls it firdaus. The names are different. The destination is the same, a state in which the traces no longer bind, the seeds no longer sprout, the ruts no longer determine the trajectory of experience. A state of freedom in which the person acts without accumulating karma, because the person acts from awareness rather than from conditioning, from love rather than from fear, from the witness consciousness rather than from the ego. The final part of this investigation will put it all together. The neuroscience, the quantum physics, the traditions, and address the question that every human being must eventually face. What karma are you creating right now? And what will you do with your next intention? 3 investigations, 3 independent approaches to the ancient question: do your actions matter? And the answer from the neuroscience, from the quantum physics, from every major contemplative tradition in human history is yes. Not in the trivial sense that everyone already knows. Of course, your actions have consequences. Of course, choices matter. Of course, what you do affects what happens next. In a deeper sense. In the sense that your actions are not merely events that produce subsequent events. Your actions are inscriptions. They write themselves into the structure of your brain, the chemistry of your body, the epigenetic code of your DNA, the quantum field of reality, and the karmic stream that the traditions describe as extending across lifetimes, across generations, and across the boundary between the individual and the cosmos. Every intentional action leaves a trace. The trace persists. The trace shapes everything that follows. And the accumulated trace is the total record of all your intentions, all your choices, all your habitual patterns of thought and behavior constitute the karmic architecture of your life. The neuroscience established the mechanism at the biological level. Hebb's rule. Neurons that fire together wire together. Graybiel's habit circuits. Repeated actions transfer from conscious control to automatic execution in the basal ganglia. Neural plasticity. The brain physically reshapes itself in response to experience, growing in the directions you use it, shrinking in the directions you neglect. Somatic markers. Every significant decision deposits a bodily trace that biases future decisions. Psychoneuroimmunology. Every emotional state is recorded in the immune system, the endocrine system, and the body's inflammatory profile. Epigenetic inheritance. The traces of experience are written into the molecular code that regulates gene expression and transmitted to your children and grandchildren through the germline. The biology of karma is established science. Your actions leave traces. The traces shape your future, and the traces extend beyond your individual life into the lives of your descendants. The quantum physics extended the mechanism beyond the biological level into territory that is speculative but physically consistent, and remarkably aligned with the tradition's descriptions. The observer effect. Every conscious act is a quantum measurement that collapses possibility into actuality and leaves a permanent trace in the quantum history of the universe. The quantum Zeno effect. Repeated intentional actions stabilize specific quantum patterns in the brain, deepening the karmic ruts through which future actions flow. The implicate order. Every action is enfolded into the deeper structure of reality, preserved in the holographic memory of the cosmos, shaping the unfolding of all subsequent events. Retrocausality. Karmic consequences may reach backward through time, creating feedback loops between future ripening and present intention. Quantum entanglement. Every human interaction creates a non-local connection between the participants, a karmic bond that persists beyond the interaction and correlates the future experience of both parties. and the quantum vacuum. Every intentional action may modify the information content of the vacuum itself, contributing to the cosmic karmic structure from which all experience emerges. The traditions provided the map. Buddhism's cetana, the principle that intention, not action, is karma. Hinduism's three karmas, sanchita, prarabdha, and kriyamana, the accumulated, the activated, and the currently created. Christianity's sowing and reaping, the agricultural metaphor for the karmic law, combined with grace as the force that can break the cycle. Islam's amal and niyya, deeds and intentions, recorded to the atom's weight, transformable through sincere repentance. And every tradition's prescription for karmic freedom, the noble eightfold path, nishkama karma, grace, toba, technologies for changing the quality of intention, the direction of action, and the depth of awareness, so that the karmic traces you create are traces of liberation rather than traces of bondage. Now, let us confront the objections one final time. The first objection is the justice objection. Karma, as the traditions describe it, implies that suffering is deserved, that the person who suffers is experiencing the consequences of their own past actions. This implication has been used to justify indifference to suffering, to blame victims for their misfortune, and to rationalize social inequality as the natural result of karmic merit and demerit. If the poor are poor because of their karma, why help them? If the sick are sick because of their past actions, why heal them? The karma concept, in the hands of the privileged, becomes a weapon of moral complacency. This objection is morally serious and historically valid. The karma concept has been misused in India and elsewhere to justify caste hierarchy, to blame victims, and to excuse inaction. But the misuse is a distortion of the concept, not a consequence of it. The Buddhist tradition explicitly rejects the equation of suffering with karmic desert. The Buddha said, "It is not the case that all suffering is the result of karma. Some suffering is produced by physical causes, illness, natural disaster, genetic predisposition. Some suffering is produced by other people's actions, violence, exploitation, injustice. And some suffering is produced by karma, by the ripening of seeds that the person themselves planted. The three categories are not mutually exclusive. A person can suffer from all three simultaneously, and the response to suffering in every tradition is compassion, not judgment. The Buddhist response to suffering is metta-loving kindness, not "you deserve it." The Hindu response is seva, selfless service, not "it's your karma." The Christian response is charity, not "God is punishing you." And the Islamic response is zakat, obligatory giving, not Allah is testing you. The traditions do not teach that suffering should be observed with indifference because it is karmic. They teach that suffering should be met with compassion because compassion is the karmic response that plants seeds of healing, and indifference is the karmic response that plants seeds of cruelty. Furthermore, the concept of kriyamana karma, the karma you are creating now, means that your response to another person's suffering is itself a karmic act. If you witness suffering and respond with compassion, you plant seeds of compassion. If you witness suffering and respond with indifference, rationalizing your inaction with "it's their karma," you plant seeds of indifference. The karma of the sufferer is the sufferer's business. The karma of the witness is the witness's business. And the witness's karma is determined not by the sufferer's past actions, but by the witness's present response. The karma concept, properly understood, does not justify indifference. It demands compassion because compassion is the only response that creates the kind of karma you want to carry into your future. The second objection is the mechanism objection. The quantum dimensions of karma, Zeno stabilization, implicate order preservation, retrocausal ripening, entanglement-based relational karma are speculative. They have not been experimentally confirmed, and the gap between established neuroscience and speculative quantum theory is wide enough to undermine the credibility of the entire framework. This objection is valid. The quantum mechanism of karma is a hypothesis, but the biological mechanism is established, and the biological mechanism alone is sufficient to validate the core karmic principle. Actions leave traces. Traces shape future experience. Traces are transmitted across generations. The intention behind the action determines the quality of the trace. These are facts, documented, replicated, published. The quantum extension adds depth and explanatory power, but even without the quantum extension, the karma concept has a solid scientific foundation, and the quantum extension, while speculative, is not arbitrary. It is grounded in established physics. The Zeno effect is real, the observer effect is real, entanglement is real. The implicate order is a mathematically rigorous interpretation of quantum mechanics. The extension is consistent with the tradition's descriptions which independently, across cultures and centuries, describe a reality in which actions leave cosmic traces, in which intention shapes the quantum field, in which karmic bonds persist across time and space. The convergence between the physics and the traditions does not constitute proof, but it constitutes a hypothesis worth investigating and a framework worth taking seriously. The third objection is the fatalism objection. If karma determines the trajectory of your life, if your current circumstances are the product of past karmic seeds, then the future is already determined. Free will is an illusion. The choices you make now are themselves products of past karma, the karmic seeds that produced your current neural pathways, your current somatic markers, your current habitual patterns of thought and behavior. You are not choosing freely. You are executing karma. And the concept of karmic freedom, nibbana, moksha, salvation, is incoherent, because the path to freedom is itself determined by the karma that preceded it. This objection connects directly to our investigation of free will, and the answer we arrived at there applies here. Karma is not determinism. Karma is conditioning. The difference is crucial. Determinism means the future is fixed. No alternative is possible. No deviation from the predetermined trajectory. Conditioning means the future is biased. Certain alternatives are more probable than others. Certain trajectories are easier to follow. Certain patterns are more likely to repeat. But conditioning is not determination. The conditioned person retains the capacity, the quantum capacity, the process one capacity to select an alternative template, to break the pattern, to plant a different seed. The capacity may be difficult to exercise. The conditioning may be deep. The ruts may be entrenched, but the capacity is real as the conscious veto that Libet identified, as real as the process one selection that Stapp described, as real as the prefrontal override of the amygdala that Schwartz demonstrated in OCD patients. The traditions are explicit about this. Karma is not fate. The Buddhist tradition insists that new karma can always be created, that the karmic stream is not a fixed channel, but a river that can be redirected by deliberate action. The Hindu tradition insists that kriyamana karma, present moment karma, is always within the individual's control, regardless of how heavy the burden of sanchita and prarabdha karma may be. The Christian tradition insists that grace can intervene at any moment, breaking the chain of karmic consequence and opening a new trajectory. The Islamic tradition insists that tawbah, sincere repentance, can transform negative karma into positive karma at any point. The traditions do not describe a prison. They describe a river that flows according to the accumulated momentum of past actions, but that can be redirected by the deliberate, conscious, intentional placement of new actions in the present moment. Now let us trace the connections to every investigation we have conducted. The observer effect is the quantum foundation of karma. Every observation collapses a possibility. Every collapse leaves a trace. Every trace shapes the future. Karma is the observer effect applied to life, the accumulated record of all your observations, all your collapses, all the possibilities you selected, and the possibilities you excluded. The heart investigation revealed that the heart is the primary organ of karmic perception. The somatic markers that Damasio described, the bodily traces that bias future decisions, operate through the heart's neural network. The heart's 40,000 neurons process emotional information and generate the gut feelings that guide behavior. The heart's electromagnetic field carries the karmic signature, the coherence or incoherence of your emotional state, to every cell in your body and to every person in your vicinity. Your karma is broadcast through your heart, and the quality of the broadcast, coherent or incoherent, loving or fearful, trusting or defensive, is determined by the accumulated karmic traces that your past actions have deposited in the heart's neural network. The placebo investigation demonstrated that karmic intention produces physical consequences. The patient who intends to heal, who believes in the healing, who expects the healing, who directs attention toward the healing, produces endorphins, dopamine, immune enhancement, and gene expression changes that promote health. The intention creates the biology. The karma of the intention is written in the body, and the body responds not to the pill but to the intention, not to the chemistry but to the karma. The free will investigation established that consciousness has the capacity to break karmic patterns. Process 1. The conscious selection of a neural template is the mechanism by which the karmic stream can be redirected. The veto, the capacity to inhibit an automatic response, is the mechanism by which karmic ruts can be escaped, and the practices that strengthen the veto, meditation, ethical discipline, contemplative prayer, are karmic technologies that build the neural infrastructure of freedom. The fear investigation demonstrated karma operating in its most destructive mode. Chronic fear is the Zeno stabilization of negative karmic patterns, the repeated observation of threatened outcomes that deepens the ruts of anxiety, cortisol, immune suppression, and cardiac incoherence. The fear creates the reality. It fears the ultimate negative karma, the self-fulfilling prophecy that the traditions describe as the cycle of suffering, and that the quantum Zeno effect explains as the stabilization of negative quantum patterns through repeated anxious observation. The synchronicity investigation revealed karma operating in its most creative mode. Synchronistic events, meaningful coincidences that connect inner intention with outer events through a causal correlations, are, in the Pauli-Jung framework, manifestations of the implicate order, responding to the karmic quality of the observer's consciousness. When the observer's consciousness is aligned, when the intention is clear, the heart is coherent, the awareness is expanded, the implicate order unfolds, synchronistic events that support the intention. This is positive karma, manifesting as meaningful coincidence, the universe responding to the quality of your attention with events that mirror and amplify it. The subconscious investigation revealed that karma operates primarily through the unconscious mind. The 95% of cognitive activity that occurs below the threshold of awareness, the somatic markers, the implicit memories, the habitual patterns, the karmic seeds stored in the alaya vijnana, constitutes the karmic infrastructure of your life. The conscious 5% selects, directs, and occasionally overrides. But the karmic momentum, the accumulated force of all past intentions, all past actions, all past habitual patterns, flows through the unconscious. And the practices that the traditions prescribe, meditation, dream work, ethical purification, cardiac coherence, are technologies for accessing the unconscious, examining its karmic contents, and deliberately reshaping them. The AI investigation clarified what karma is not. AI processes information. AI makes decisions. AI produces outputs that are indistinguishable from the products of human intelligence. But AI does not create karma because AI has no intention. AI has no cetana, no niyya, no conscious direction of awareness toward a chosen outcome. AI has processing. Humans have intention. And intention, the conscious, directed, deliberate quality of awareness that accompanies an action, is what the traditions call karma. Without intention, there is no karma. Without consciousness, there is no karmic trace. And without karmic traces, there is no karmic stream, no accumulated momentum, no trajectory, no destiny. The machine computes. The human creates karma. And the difference that every tradition identifies as the essential difference, is consciousness. The biological antenna investigation proposed that the body receives information from the quantum vacuum, from the implicate order, through the heart's electromagnetic field and the brain's microtubule network. If this is correct, then karma is not merely outgoing, not merely the traces that your actions leave in reality. Karma is also incoming, the information from the implicate order that shapes your unconscious processing, that generates the templates from which consciousness selects, that produces the synchronistic events and the intuitive knowledge that guide your life. The karmic stream flows in both directions, outward from your actions into the implicate order, and inward from the implicate order into your unconscious mind. You are not merely creating karma, you are receiving it, receiving the accumulated karmic information of all beings whose actions have been enfolded into the implicate order. You are embedded in a karmic web, a web of mutual influence that connects every conscious being to every other conscious being, through the quantum field in which all karma is preserved. The grief investigation revealed karma's deepest emotional dimension, the karmic bond between people who love each other, the connection between two hearts, the electromagnetic coupling, the quantum entanglement, the shared karmic history that the traditions describe as extending across lifetimes, does not dissolve at death. If the implicate order preserves all information, then the karmic traces of your relationship with the people you love are preserved indefinitely, enfolded into the deep structure of reality, available for unfolding in future encounters, in future lifetimes, in the ongoing karmic stream that death interrupts but does not end. The grief you feel at the loss of a loved one is, in the karmic framework, the body's perception of a bond that has been stretched but not broken, a quantum entanglement that persists beyond physical separation, a karmic connection that the traditions unanimously describe as surviving the death of the body. The evolution investigation connected karma to the 4 billion year history of life on Earth. If evolution operates as a quantum search algorithm as we explored in that investigation, then the evolutionary process itself is a form of cosmic karma. Every mutation is an action. Every selection is a consequence. Every adaptation is a karmic trace that shapes the trajectory of all subsequent evolution. The fear response that Ledoux mapped, the amygdala's hijack, the cortisol cascade, the tunnel vision of threat, is the karmic inheritance of 400 million years of predator-prey interaction. The capacity for love, the oxytocin system, the mirror neurons, the cardiac coherence that HeartMath measures, is the karmic inheritance of millions of years of social bonding, pair bonding, and cooperative child rearing. Your biology is your evolutionary karma, the accumulated trace of every survival decision, every reproductive choice, every adaptive innovation that your ancestors performed across the vast temporal span of life's history. The distance and time investigations, the distance illusion, the time illusion. The Timeless Existence series revealed that the boundaries within which karma operates are not the boundaries that common sense assumes. If distance is an illusion, if non-locality is a feature of quantum reality, then the karmic traces of your actions are not confined to your immediate vicinity. They extend non-locally, through the quantum correlations of the implicate order, to every point in the universe that is entangled with your actions. If time is an illusion, if the block universe is real, if retrocausality operates, then the karmic traces of your actions are not confined to the future. They extend backward through time, reaching into the past and forward into the future simultaneously. Karma operates in a reality that is deeper than space and more comprehensive than time. A reality in which every action is connected to every other action. Through the quantum web of the implicate order, every thread connects. Every investigation points to the same conclusion. Your actions matter not merely in the obvious sense that what you do affects what happens next, but in the deeper sense that what you intend writes itself into the structure of reality, shapes the quantum field from which your future emerges, transmits itself to your descendants through the molecular machinery of the epigenome, and contributes to the cosmic karmic structure from which all experience unfolds. The practical question, as always, the only question that ultimately matters, is what you will do with this knowledge. The tradition's answer is unanimous: be intentional. Not merely in the modern productivity sense of set goals and work toward them, in the karmic sense of bringing full awareness to every action, every thought, every word, every deed. The quality of your intention determines the quality of the karmic trace. Unconscious intention, the automatic, reactive, habitual patterns that run in the background of awareness, creates unconscious karma. Deep, powerful, largely negative, because the unconscious defaults to fear, to self-protection, to the contracted mode that the amygdala has been running for 400 million years. Conscious intention, the deliberate, aware, chosen direction of attention, creates conscious karma. Lighter, more creative, more aligned with the expanded awareness that the traditions identify as the natural state of consciousness when it is not contracted by conditioning. The first step is always awareness, not more effort, not more discipline, not more willpower. Awareness, the simple, sustained, non-judgmental awareness of what you are doing and why you are doing it. This is sati mindfulness. It is the foundation of every karmic technology in every tradition. When you are aware of your intention, you can change it. When you are unaware, you cannot. The unconscious mind will run its programs, the sankharas, the basal ganglia routines, the habitual patterns that Graybiel mapped, and the karma will accumulate in the direction that the programs determine. Awareness interrupts the program. It inserts a gap between the stimulus and the response, the gap that Libet identified as the window for the veto, the gap that every tradition identifies as the space of freedom. In that gap, in that moment of awareness, between the impulse and the action, you can choose. You can select a different template. You can plant a different seed. You can redirect the karmic stream. The second step is practice, daily, sustained, specific. The traditions are unanimous. Karmic transformation is not a theoretical understanding. It is a practical skill that must be cultivated through repetition, the way a musician cultivates technique through daily practice, the way an athlete builds strength through daily training. Meditation cultivates awareness, the foundation of all karmic change. Davidson's research shows that 8 weeks of mindfulness meditation produces measurable changes in brain structure, increased grey matter density in the hippocampus, memory, the temporoparietal junction, empathy, and the prefrontal cortex, self-regulation. 8 weeks. Not years, not decades. 2 months of daily practice physically restructures the brain in the direction of greater awareness, greater empathy, and greater self-regulation. The karmic technology works, and it works measurably. Prayer directs intention towards specific karmic outcomes. The person who prays for healing is directing the unconscious mind's processing toward healing templates, and the placebo research demonstrates that directed intention produces specific biological outcomes. The person who prays for compassion is directing the unconscious mind's processing toward compassion templates, and Davidson's research demonstrates that compassion practice produces specific neural and immunological changes. Prayer is not wishful thinking. It is directed karmic intention, the deliberate planting of specific seeds in the fertile soil of the unconscious mind. Ethical practice deposits positive seeds with every action. The Buddhist precepts not to kill, not to steal, not to lie, not to engage in sexual misconduct, not to take intoxicants, are not merely moral rules. They are karmic prescriptions. Each precept prevents the planting of a specific category of negative seed and creates the conditions for the planting of corresponding positive seeds. Not killing plants seeds of harmlessness, not stealing plants seeds of generosity, not lying plants seeds of truth. The precepts are a comprehensive seed management technology, a systematic program for filling the alaya vijnana with wholesome seeds and preventing the accumulation of unwholesome ones. Cardiac coherence optimizes the heart's karmic antenna. HeartMath's quick coherence technique, 5 minutes of heart-focused breathing combined with the recall of a specific experience of gratitude or love, produces immediate, measurable changes in heart rate variability, cortisol levels, DHEA production, and immune function. The practice shifts the heart from incoherence to coherence, from the karmic broadcast of fear and disorder to the karmic broadcast of love and harmony. And the shift affects not only your own physiology, but the physiology of everyone in your electromagnetic vicinity, because the heart's coherent field entrains nearby hearts, as McCraty's research has demonstrated. Dream work accesses the unconscious karmic archive and integrates karmic material into conscious awareness. And compassion, the deliberate, sustained, heart-centered generation of care for other beings, is the single most powerful karmic practice available to a human being. Because compassion creates coherent karma. It deposits seeds of connection, of healing, of expanded awareness, of the non-contracted state that the traditions call love. And the accumulated seeds of compassion, watered by daily practice, cultivated through sustained attention, protected from the weeds of fear and anger and greed, produce a karmic harvest that the traditions describe as liberation, not liberation, from the world. Liberation from the contracted, fearful, unconscious mode of operating that produces suffering. Liberation into the expanded, aware, compassionate mode of operating that produces the traditions say peace. The third step is surrender. Not passivity, not resignation. The active surrender of outcomes to the process, the release of attachment to the fruits of action, the trust that the karmic law operates justly even when the outcomes are not what you wanted. This is nishkama karma. This is tawakkul. This is grace. It is the recognition that you control your intention but not your outcome, that you can choose the seed but not the weather, that you can plant with care but not guarantee the harvest. And the surrender is itself a karmic act, a seed of trust that produces the fruit of peace, a seed of release that produces the fruit of freedom, a seed of faith that produces the fruit of the deep, unshakable confidence that the traditions call in their different vocabularies salvation, liberation, enlightenment, and peace. Your next action is your next karmic seed. You will plant it in the next moment, in the next thought you think, the next word you speak, the next choice you make. The seed will be deposited in your neural pathways, in your somatic markers, in your epigenome, in the quantum field of the implicate order. It will be stored. It will accumulate. It will ripen when the conditions are right, when the moment arrives, when the fruit is ready to emerge. And the quality of the fruit, whether it produces suffering or freedom, whether it deepens the ruts of unconscious reaction or opens the channels of conscious awareness, depends entirely on the quality of the seed. The traditions have been telling you this for 4,000 years. The neuroscience is now confirming it. The quantum physics is now extending it. And the choice, the karmic choice, the quantum choice, the choice that writes itself into the fabric of reality and shapes the trajectory of everything that follows, is yours. What will you plant?